Joining us now is Adeniyi Okpe, with stories trending around the world. Hello, Ajayi. How was your weekend?
How are you? It was excellent. How was yours?
Yeah, great.
Fantastic.
Ojinika, now take charge.
As always. Now we have the queen of our rice back on the table. How are you?
Thank you very much.
But you know she is the queen of our rice, right?
I'm just remember. I didn't know that. Am I the queen of our rice?
We will soon deport you to the palace in Benin. You know that project is still in place.
We offered you to the king. Remember that, right?
I have no idea.
Good morning, Rufai. How are you?
Good morning, Oji. It's good you reminded us of that fact that Adesuwa is they are waiting at Adesuwa in the palace in Benin.
Yes, they are. All right. Well, good morning to you, viewers. We begin what's trending in Nigeria. Over the weekend, reactions trailed the unanimous decision by the National Assembly Joint Committee on the Independent National Electoral Commission, which recommended voting rights for married underage girls. The committee proposed a review of the section of the Electoral Act that pegged the eligibility age of voters at 18 years old. The lawmakers claim that if a lady who was not up to 18 years was married, she should be considered to be mature enough to vote. The INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, who was at the inaugural session of the panel, expressed doubt about the proposal, stating that the country has a constitutional age for marriage, which was 18 years old. Well, I think that the INEC chairman is absolutely right. I cannot believe that federal lawmakers are legislating for underage marriage instead of legislating against it.
You know, it is so bizarre, the thought of it. And thank God that we had one person, you know, who was wise enough to say this is preposterous. And this speaks to a problem in itself. No one is talking about underage married boys voting before 18. Why?
Right.
Because we do not marry underage boys away. Secondly, the Child Rights Act, not just the Constitution, puts the age of marriage at 18, even though only 24 states in the country have domesticated it. You know, it puts the age at 18, and it is annoying that we have stolen the childhood of these children.
Number one.
And yet we have lawmakers who have been elected by their parents trying to steal that childhood all over again.
Yes.
It is annoying.
But
we're trying to legalize illegality here.
Exactly. Legalize illegality. But the point needs to be made that it is not a new thing. I'm sure in the North, these underage girls have been voting, Dr. Abati.
Well, I mean, all the relevant laws in Nigeria put the age of consent at 18. But child marriage remains a problem. Consistently, we have had lawmakers in the National Assembly who have been trying to push the envelope. And Nigeria has a major problem with underage marriage. Nigeria is rated as the 11th country in the world, most notorious for child marriages. Nigeria, according to the United Nations, has a case of 44% of child marriages in the country. And this has been part of the problem. And there is also an ethnic, cultural, religious dimension to it. Each time the issue comes up in the National Assembly, you will find our own lawmakers in Nigeria who are supposed to be enlightened, who are supposed to be representing us, pushing the case for child marriage. In the 8th National Assembly, we had the case of one lawmaker coming up boasting about how he had married a child. And how that was an achievement. In this same 9th National Assembly, we have had the case of one lawmaker, or was it the 8th National Assembly, standing up and parading his wives.
4 wives.
As chattel. And what we see is this continuing demonstration of patriarchy as a form of domestic terrorism in Nigeria. And I think it is absolutely scandalous that anybody that has his brain in the right place, that is right thinking, that has been voted for by Nigerians, will stand up on the floor of the National Assembly and say that underage girls, having been married, should be allowed the opportunity to vote and be recognized as adults. I recognize the fact that that person is alluding to a section of the penal code which says that once you are married, you are now an adult. And that's part of the problem we have. That section of the law, you know, is obnoxious, is vexatious, and it has to be looked at, and it has to be removed.
That's exactly
so that it will no longer provide a justification for, you know, misinformed, backward, conservative elements, pedophiles who find their way into the National Assembly to try to push the envelope. What we need to say is that other reasonable members of the community and reasonable members of the National Assembly should shoot this down. Now we have the Child Rights Act, which only about 24 states have signed up to. The other states have refused. They are hiding under religion. They are hiding under ethnicity. They are hiding under culture. I think the people we elect to represent us in parliament need to be properly educated that, look, a girl child is not a chattel. She's entitled to education. A woman is not a property. She's entitled to absolute rights. Well, absolute would be a wrong word to use. To rights under the Constitution, and not to be treated, you know, like a chattel, like property. So this is where we are. Patriarchy remains a major problem in Nigeria, and that is why we have continuing cases of rape.
Absolutely.
The male folk, they think that rape is a privilege. It should not be. It's not a privilege. It's a crime. You know, the demonization, the dehumanization, the disempowerment of women is a crime under the relevant laws in Nigeria.
And it needs to stop.
That lawmaker who stood up to put up that kind of motion on the floor of parliament should be ashamed himself. He should be ashamed of himself.
Indeed.
And he should be shamed appropriately by all concerned, reasonable members of our community.
Very well said, Dr. Abati. Rufai, your take on the story.
I mean, I'm quite very sad this morning because we look for every 2 steps we take forward, we look for 15 steps to go backward as a country and in most of our thinking. In a country where you have close to 14 million pupils out of school, this is a priority. How about we flip the role and you make a law that a woman that doesn't have education or that have not reached the age of 18 cannot get married? How about you flip that? How about we empower women? Because I know to a very large extent, if we empower women, then we'll be able to have societal growth triple. But we don't do that. And I'm not surprised when you look at the antecedents. Somebody that boasted about how he married an underage child, I was reading the papers this morning, was saying if you get 40 million people to support him, he'll vie for presidency. So imagine that kind of thinking that is pervasive in society. And we've seen men that think the conquest of women is their versatility in society. Like Dr. Abati cited, the lawmaker came out and was showing his 4 wives, and he was saying that made him a man. And when you try to track the cerebral inputs, you know, of national policy making, it's zero, it's void. It just shows to a large extent what we've minimized ourselves to in this country. And it's so very scary that was said in our hollow chambers, you know, where we're supposed to have progressive discussions to take our country forward. We should do all possible to protect our schools. It starts with that in the first place. Education is threatened. Those are the conversations we're having on the floor. How we can protect our schools, how we can make it easy for students to go to school and come back safely. The boys that were recently rescued said they will never go to school again because they don't feel safe in those schools. Have we tended to those boys in the first place? Have we tended to girls and ensure that we can drive primary school enrollment rates? Those are the conversations we should have. But I'm excited that we've had people that shut these things down. We should constantly shut this down. I remember when the child bride thing came up. Everybody came out to shut that down. Now, that's what we should do in society. We'll definitely have a dissenting voice due to cultural antecedents, but it's incumbent on us to shut it down because we don't want our country to be a banana republic and sex should be the order of the day. We constantly live in a country where every decision process is hinged on the virility of sex, and it's very sad with underage people. That's the kind of society we build where competence doesn't matter again. It's only what you can give sexually, and we should stop this. And what is the craze about underage child? They are supposed to be your children that you should tend and nurture to the future. I can't even imagine myself sleeping with an underage child, and so people vehemently, boldly come out to show off.
All right.
We should start having mental examination for people in our hollow chambers.
Anyway, Section 29(4), subsection 1 of the Child Rights Act recognizes the fact that a woman is of marriageable age at the age of 18.
That's it.
The Matrimonial Causes Act also makes it very clear that a woman is only of marriageable age at 18. Mm-hmm. So if anybody is arguing that, okay, we should amend the laws, any girl that is underage should be married and should have the right to vote, that is against the laws of the land.
That's what Yakubu said.
The people in the National Assembly, they should not do anything illegal.
Against, yes.
They should be seen to be progressive, and they should not be seen to be promoting anything that violates the rights of any individual, whether a child or, in fact, I will have expected them to be more interested in persuading the other states that have not passed the Child Rights Act to say, look, pass the Child Rights Act.
That first. That's it.
There is a group that goes about with the slogan, girls, not brides.
Child, not bride.
Abi?
Yes.
Girl.
Child,
is
not
it
bride.
child,
yes.
not brides?
Yes.
Okay,
Child,
whether it's child, not brides, or girls, not brides, that is what we should focus on.
Yes.
You know, all these pedophiles looking for small girls of 13 and 12 and 11 and hiding under religion. You know, they should be called out and shaped. And they must not use the National Assembly of Nigeria to justify their, criminal and retrogressive inclinations with regard to marriage and whatever is associated thereby.
All right. We'll take another story, still in Nigeria. Reactions have been trailing the escape over the weekend of a notorious armed robber from the custody of the Lagos State Police Command. The 27-year-old Adeniyi Ajayi was arrested for armed robbery and rape of several women earlier in the year after being paraded by the Lagos State Commissioner of Police, Hakeem Odosunmu. Back in August, here's what he had to say.
How many have you raped in total? You have to be truthful now.
It's going to be about 3 people now.
3 people. How many operations have you successfully executed?
I can't count them, but I've been doing that since 2019 January. That's why I'm requesting them to just waste me, because I have a reason why. Yes.
Tell us the reason. What do you mean by saying waste you?
I have a reason why I say they should waste me, because the brain that I go and learn is when they get me to prison. That was 2018 when I went there. That's why I learned brain that when you come outside, come and join us, come and use going with us. So from there we can be working together. So when I come outside, I was looking for who to help me, and my family are not ready to help. So my solution now is that maybe they should just waste me. That's what I'm thinking, because for them to send me back to prison, I know I'm going to be hard more than this. What I mean by wasting is that I mean they should kill me. That's what I mean.
Is it that you don't believe that you have a future?
I don't see anybody that can help me now. That is why I say maybe they should just, because I don't want to disrupt Nigeria more than this.
Oh, this is such a sad story, Adesua, Dr. Abati Rufai. Apparently, he escaped through the help of some senior police officers. And this is so scary that this young man, Ajayi, is talking about dying. He really is right now at large, and we don't even know what he's going to do after now.
That is scary. And this speaks to 2 major issues for me. The role of our correctional facilities. Yes. Do they even correct anything? This is someone who gave up that there will be any sort of reformation for him in custody. in our correctional facilities. So that's an indictment on the Interior Ministry, on government agencies who handle such correctional facilities. Secondly, for me, the issue this points to is rehabilitation back into society. He talked about his family not caring, and so they should kill him. He's at large, maybe not a good example, but for even those who go through the process and are released, do we have comprehensive, rehabilitation programs for these who have committed a crime, paid the price, and are back to society? More often than not, you will see those agencies, non-governmental agencies who handle cases like this, say to you that they go back to crime because there's nothing to do. They're just left to their fate. So these are major issues we should be looking at. And then perhaps the last one should be, who are those security officers who aided his, prison break?
They need to be
found. They should be found. They should be brought to book. And of course, the police authorities need to find such a hardened criminal who says, "I'm ready to die."
I mean, he said that, and he was able to escape. That's the scary part of the whole process.
He says, "I'm not going to change. I'm not going to change."
Yes, Dr. Abati.
Well, I mean, the relevant laws with regard to rape include the Violence Against Persons Protection Act, Section 1, subsection 1, thereby. The Child Rights Act of 2015, of 2005, Sections 1 and 2. The Criminal Code, Sections 357 and 358, and the Penal Code, Section 282. So which means that under our laws, rape is a criminal offense. If you go and rape somebody, you are liable, and you get convicted, you serve your term. But part of the argument is that, one, those punishments do not go far enough under the laws. So people go to prison, they come out, they continue with the offense. And there are lessons that we can learn from other jurisdictions. In other jurisdictions, if you go in for certain categories of crime, they label you. They put a chain around your ankle. And everybody that sees you will know that this is a serious sexual offender. In Nigeria now, some states, Lagos, Ekiti, they've opened a sexual offenders register, whereby if you see a person who may have served a jail term and has come out, you will know that this is a criminal, this is a threat to the normal existence of every member of society. That is one. The second point is that this case of this gentleman raises an issue. When people go to prison, we change the name of our prisons. They don't call them prisons again, they call them correctional centers. Now, this puts a lie to the idea of whether our prisons have now become correctional centers. From what he has said, you see that when people go to prison in Nigeria, in fact, they come out worse.
That's what he said.
In fact, he said he learned to be, worse, even in prison.
Yes.
And that is why perhaps when the criminals talk about prison, or when in popular culture people talk about prison, they say the person has gone to college. What does it mean? The person has left society to go to college to acquire higher education, to be of a bigger threat to society. People don't go to prison for correction in Nigeria. They go to college to be worse human beings within society. And this is a very good illustration of how that is the case. So government, this is a wake-up for government. A man goes into prison, he comes out, he says, in fact, he learned more inside prison. He went to college, as they say. Now, what is the third point? The man is saying he should be wasted.
That was the hardest
By his own admission, with his own mouth, he's saying that, in fact, he's a threat to society.
He said it. And the
Self-confession.
fact that he said it before he went to prison, and they didn't confine him somewhere.
So the state is not going to kill him because he says he should be killed.
Yes.
He wants to die. That's not how it works. There is due process involved. But what is certain, what he's pointing out, is that he's prepared and he's ready. And nothing will happen as far as he is concerned, because he will repeat the offense.
Yes.
So he becomes a threat to society. Number 4 point. What are we dealing with here? Is it just criminality, or the fact that this gentleman is on drugs and he needs help? He talks about he needs help family could not help him. The state has not been able to help him. Who is going to help him? I think that the authorities should, take his case seriously and see how they can help him. Perhaps it's not a question of drugs. Perhaps it's a case of mental health.
Right.
He probably needs attention, psychiatric attention. And this video should not be allowed to go to waste. The authorities should look at it, identify him, locate him, and see how the help that he's asking for and that he has not been able to get can be provided.
Very well said. Rufai, before I come to you, I'd like to take another story so you can discuss both. Thousands of aggrieved applicants who were shortlisted by the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation to fill positions for the experienced cadre have written an open letter to President Mohammadu Buhari alleging foul play. In the letter, the applicants claim that since they were shortlisted for the graduate position back in 2019, no one from the NNPC had contacted them. They, however, allege that those who applied as graduate trainees had already been employed. While using the hashtag NNPC 2019 EH closure, the applicants reached out via Twitter, also to the Vice President, Senate President, and the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, stating that the 2019 recruitment process only favored relatives of very important persons. Rufai, we've seen this type of situation. Yes.
Nigerian. That's quintessentially Nigerian, and I'm very sad to say that. We all remember how the customs collected money from a lot of people and there was a stampede and they lost their life. Did the minister resign? The Minister of Interior then? He didn't resign. Now, you remember, we all remember that case. That man is still a strong, viable contender in his state as regards politics. So that's a normal refrain, and it's been going on for a while. Yeka Windu did a documentary in the 80s. As at the 80s, we had a case of people paying to get into position. I think it was 1,000 naira to get into the customs. It's very sad. Close to 40 years after, that's what we are still doing. And that's what is indicative in the nation. And that's why we come here to speak every day. People just think we want to speak or we want to just, castigate people. But no, things are not working. That's why we're coming out to speak every time. I'll move on quickly to the next issue. That young man, that video had been on for a while. I saw that video. I was quite very sad when it happened. But for me, we have lost the essence of what a prison or a correctional center is. Prior to this time, people used to be killed when they committed any offense. I think it was Jeremy Bentham in England that started bringing that reformation. In fact, it was said that in medieval England, an average person that lived up to the age of 30 could have seen over 1,000 executions in his lifetime because people were killed for things as little as arson. But he brought this, penitentiary system, Jeremy Bentham of the University College London, to be able to help people reform and get better in society. But from time immemorial, people get worse off in prisons. Anini learned criminality in prison. Lawrence Omajiakbo Anini learned criminality. He became worse off after he went to prison and he came out. So we need to look critically of ways to reform the prison. We had laws recently to reform the prison. I just hope they come into full effect. A lot of people are maltreated, dehumanized, and there's a lot of sodomy going on in Nigerian prisons. It's a big revelation I'm giving you now. The other very sad part of it is, who was the top police officer that let this man out of the prison, this great criminal? But it's not today. In the case of Anini, Lawrence Omajiakbo Anini and the Osumbos, that ravaged Bendel State, Niger Delta region in the 80s, they had another guy called Georgie Yamu, DSP Georgie Yamu, Bagbati was his nickname. He was the one that was aiding and abetting Anini, and they were sentenced together. And we all know how that went. So those top police officers...
To end this program...
You want to take your take on the NNPC story?
Yes, the NNPC story. I was going to say that the NNPC has to speak up because this has been very controversial.
Correct.
The NNPC had two categories of recruitments as advertised. Persons who will be fresh recruits and persons who were supposed to be experienced component of the recruitment process. Now, what we know is that they went ahead and recruited the fresh people. Even that was controversial because there was one Mr. Olajengbesi who went to court and said NNPC was discriminatory because NNPC said if you are above the age of 28 years, you could not apply. So, and then the other segment of it, experienced recruits, that was suspended. But with all this controversy, the NNPC has not yet spoken up. So we cannot make a final statement on what is going on with regard to this recruitment. I think the NNPC should resist the temptation to say we don't care what the public is saying. They need to provide clarity and to explain what exactly is happening. I don't know what the status of the case that Mr. Olanjengbesi took to court about the age, the discriminatory nature of the recruitment that he alleged. But of course, many Nigerians are concerned, because everybody wants to work in NNPC.
I mean, 10,000 applicants at this point are complaining about the fact that they were sidetracked and relatives of, very important persons were, given opportunity, and which is a very hard story.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Abati.
We look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.
Thank you. Well, I think that we have a little time. I want your take on that NNPC story.
Well, I mean, it's most unfortunate that this is happening, if it is true. It reinforces corruption in political systems where we sacrifice, merits on the altar of favoritism, nepotism, cronism, relatives and friends taking these juicy, as we've come to know them, positions, in public service. And that terrible notion that people have about public service of, our common wealth being shared to a few cronies and relatives. It needs to stop. It's an opportunity to change that.
People in this conversation are not complaining about cronism, but they are saying, why leave out the experienced people that you wanted to recruit?
And who are the people that replaced them?
And that experience is very important.
They replaced them with graduate trainees as opposed to... I mean, not like
there were trainees. They were supposed to also be experienced people. And the experienced people are saying, look, you should also take us into account. It's not the first time it's happening. And NNPC
has
let's hope NNPC will clarify.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow.
Ojinika.